Guys, so in this video, I'm going to be answering questions from the comments. So I said in a previous post in the community section that I was thinking of doing this because after I post the video, people fire in loads of questions, and then unless you sort of go to the comments section, you don't really get the answers. But I'm thinking if people are asking the questions, there's a good chance that I haven't explained something properly in a video. And I thought it might be an idea, and you'll have to sort of let me know whether it's any good or not, I'm just sort of flying by the seat of my pants here. So what I've done is I've got me little laptop here. I'm going to go through some of the questions in the comments, read them out, and then sort of give the answer. And hopefully, everyone can benefit from it then, rather than just me sort of going into the comments section and just typing a quick reply, which actually takes me forever. And I usually lie in bed for writing replies all night, driving me missus mad. So yeah, let's get started and we'll see how we get on. This is the first video I've ever done like this, so I don't know if you'll like it or not. We'll just see. I suppose if you like it, give it a thumbs up, and if you don't, well, don't watch it, and I'll soon know by, how it performs, whether to do another one or not. So I'll get started anyway. So the first question is from Last of Four. You guys have some weird names on this, and he says, I have a question. I'm in a debate with a customer over boarding their bathroom. I'm saying because they are having the whole lot tiled, they don't need to use moisture resistant boards if the tiles are sealed properly. Am I right in saying this, as this is the way I was shown? So, yes, you are right. If the walls are completely sealed, then there's no way that moisture can get through to the plasterboard, so it should be fine. My understanding of it is moisture resistant boards are sort of like a second line of defence. Rather than just standard plasterboard, you've got moisture resistant boards. So if the seal goes on your bath or your shower and a bit of water gets behind there, that the moisture resistant boards will take a bit more stick than standard plasterboard. But here's the thing, right, with moisture resistant boards. Now, I'm not saying they're a gimmick, but the way I see it is this. We had a pack left open once when I was on the building sites years ago. So maybe they've got better, but I doubt it. Years ago, we had a pack left open over the weekend and it lashed down all Saturday. We didn't know they were open. Just a lad left the plastic off them, and we hadn't loaded them into the house. Lashed down all Saturday, but it was sunny all Sunday. So we turned up Monday to find this pack of boards uncovered. And they've been out in the rain for the whole day, but then they've been in the dry for the day. Now, when we picked them up to try and load them in, if you ever dipped a rich tea biscuit in a cup of tea, it just falls apart. So these moisture-resistant plasterboards didn't fare well when they were soaked. They were just basically the same as a standard plasterboard. So I don't know, when they say moisture-resistant, how resistant to moisture they are. I mean, I don't really like using them because if you read the product data sheet, if you're that sad like me, you're supposed to paint these with thistle bondit before you skim them, because they're meant to be that resistant to moisture that plaster won't even stick to them. I don't know how many people do that, because on site we used to just skim them. They never used to send us thistle bondit to prime the boards with. I suppose if you did prime them with that, that's sort of waterproof, so maybe that was to help them be more waterproof. I don't know. Here's what I'd do. Here's my honest opinion on what I would do. If you're worried about moisture, forget plasterboards. Just go and buy cement board and use them instead. If you're going to board the wall and not skim it, just board it with cement board. I mean, that stuff is fantastic underwater. The builder's yard I used to use, they had a piece of it just sat in, a little offcut of this cement board just sat in a tub of water, and it was there for years. You could just pick it out. It was still rock solid. It didn't blow up or nothing. It was perfect. So you are right. If the tiles are sealed properly and the grout works and the silicone works, then there shouldn't be any water getting to the plasterboard and it should be fine. I wouldn't bother with moisture resistant boards because I think they're a waste of money, but I might be wrong. It's just my opinion. But if I was worried about it, I'd just use cement board. Next question is by Hemtet. Hemtet. Got to watch how fast you say that, haven't you? Have you ever done half a ceiling if it's a large one, and then plastered up to the finished plaster later on. So I'm assuming what you're saying, Hemtet, is if the set is too big and you've only got one sort of plaster on the job, yet there's not two of you to do half each, plaster so far and then join into it later. Yes, I've done it loads. If I'm doing hand cove ceilings by myself, I often do it then. I go round, put the cove in first, right round, and then the second half of the day I skim the middle. What I find is it's a lot easier to blend plaster in the same day. So yeah, if you skim a big ceiling and you do half of it, I try and avoid leaving it till the day after, because it dries out and then you have a suction issue you've got to deal with, and you have to start painting sealer on, and then the painter and decorator doesn't like it because the sealer causes them issues. So yeah, the short answer to your question is yeah, I have done it and I blend in. Now, people have asked me in the past, should I put a stop bead and work up to the stop bead? And I know some lads used to put like a bit of masking tape or scrim, so they'd skim up to, you know, half onto the tape and then pull the tape off to leave a nice crisp clean edge and try and skim up to that. I don't like the idea of doing a nice straight line, because I mean, if it's a joint, chances are if you do a straight line, it's going to be visible. You know, if you put a stop bead, it'll almost definitely be visible. So I always sort of feather in. So I'll do one half of the ceiling, or however you're doing you set a plaster where you need to blend in, and I'll taper it into nothing and blend it into the old background, and then I'll come back after dinner and do the other side and taper it into that way, you know. I mean, I'm doing this as the best I can sort of describe it, but yeah, I feather in both ways, try and do it whilst it's still damp, makes the job a lot easier to do. But feathering in is a bit of an art in itself, so you know, if you're good at patching, then this will be fine for you. On with the next one. Jordan Corey has said, have you tried cream of tartar instead of extra time to stop the plaster setting too quick? What about a side-by-side comparison of the two? If you've used it, how much you put in? Cheers, Kirk. Okay, yeah, we did use it. I've used it in the past. Put a capful or a big tablespoon in. Yeah, it's lovely. Makes the plaster a little bit more fluffy and slows it down setting. I'll be honest with you, I've used this like literally a couple of times, a handful of times. My usual problem is I want the plaster to set faster, not slower. I can pretty much get about 3 or 4 bags on without any retarders, and that's a big enough sort of hit for me. I don't really want to be doing much more than that. I mean, that's usually a full room if I'm going over plasterboards. So yeah, I have used it. I'll be honest with you, if I did ever retard plaster now, I've got a box of extra time. Like, I know it's a little bit more expensive, but you can't really get it wrong, it's sort of measured out for you. So you can use cream of tartar, but about a capful gives you about an extra sort of half an hour, but extra time retards it just the same. Anyway, the answer is yes, I have used it, and that's how much you use. But if you're going to ask me to recommend it, I'd probably just say buy a bag of extra time, because one bag of that will give you an hour of extra time per bucket that you use, and it's already measured out. So that's what I would recommend you use. It's sort of designed for that, But the old boys, like my old fella, he'll tell you to use cream of tartar. So I mean, it depends who you ask, doesn't it? Right. Mike T has asked, what ratio PVA do you use with water? So what's the mix ratio with me PVA? Okay, so if I'm using PVA, which I hardly ever do, but if I did have to use it because I didn't have my usual sealer, we used to just use 50-50. I'd just literally get a big painter's scuttle, have a full tub of PVA glue in there, go to the sink, fill the tub back up with water, and then tip that in the scuttle as well. And then it's exactly 50-50. Mix that up, one good coat, and that was the ratio that I used to use. Now, if you follow the directions on the back of your tub of PVA, it controls the suction a lot better, but you have to give it 2 coats and separate amounts of water. Now, the reason I never bothered doing it that way is because I only had one paint scuttle. So I didn't want to start having to tip the stuff back in and out of buckets and start measuring out. And, you know, we just sort of went with, that works. We can just use that on every single job. It's, you know, nice, simple process, 50-50, on it went, you know. Whereas if you read off the back of the tub, you've got like 7 parts water to 1 part PVA for the primer coat. Let that dry, then do another. I mean, that's, if you've got the time, follow the directions on the tub and it works a lot better. It kills the suction a lot better. And you can go over PVA when it's dry as well, by the way. You don't have to wait. You have to go over it when it's tacky. Let it dry if you want. It re-emulsifies. So you could leave it a week, go back over it. As soon as your wet plaster touches it, it goes tacky again. So that helps glue the plaster to the wall. I personally don't bother with PVA anymore. SBR is a superior product. Let that stuff dry and it kills suction dead. There's no suction whatsoever. So if you ever need to go over car light finish, which is like the grey plaster, if you ever see that stuff, forget your PVA, run for the hills, because that stuff sucks like you wouldn't believe. You put you coat a PVA on that and try and skim on it in about half an hour's time, and you're only going to get one wall on, because that grey plaster, car light finish, it's got a hell of a suction to it. We use SBR if we're skimming over that stuff as well, and it's soaking wet, it doesn't matter. It completely seals the wall, SBR. I mean, you can use Blue Grit, Thistle Bondit, Becto Contact, Plast Prime. There's millions of different primers out there, all made by different companies. Everyone uses Blue Grit. Thistle Bondit is a better version of that. British Gypsum make it. It's green. Just cost about 7 times as much. That's the only problem with it. It's about £70. Well, the last time I bought it, it's about 70 quid a tub. It's the profit got out of your job, isn't it? SBR, on the other hand, it's twice as expensive as PVA, but it goes twice as far. So it's a, you know, the initial outlay, an extra tenner. I don't know if that stretches it too far, but that's what I'd use anyway. I use SBR for everything. Okay, Dale Kefford has asked a question about bonding and blistering when he's going over the bonding, and a few people have actually jumped on because they've got similar sort of issues when they're skimming over bonding. It's getting bubbles on it. So, right, bonding, yeah, it can be a bit of a bitch, can't it? Let's put it politely. What I found with bonding is, it's ideal to skim the same day. If you leave it till the day after, starts to get suction. Same as sort of like when we were talking about blending in earlier. So I like to skim over the bonding as soon as it's sort of set. So bonding out in the morning, sort of skim it in the afternoon. Now what I've found is bonding, when it sets and it goes firm, you sort of have sometimes like a slimy, greasy surface on it in places. Like it'll go dark in patches, and some bits will still have like a greasy, slimy sort of finish to them. They haven't fully set yet. I find if I skim over that, I get bubbles straight away off it. So, I mean, they're the only issues I ever used to have, was sort of like trying to get on bonding too early when it's... Don't ever skim over it when it's wet, by the way, because it seems to stay wet. And bonding sort of flash sets, doesn't it? You know, it goes off instantly. So, if you try and skim over it when it's wet, like imagine you've used the bonding for your first coat and you're trying a second coat, you know, with board finish or multi-finish, the bonding will stay wet underneath and the finish will start to pick up. And then it sort of goes like, oh, what are them things? Creme brulees or something, when it's like, imagine like ice on water when you smash the ice and it's all like moving around. That's sort of what your finish does. Your finish is going off in like big pieces, but the bonding's wet, so as you're trialing it's just an absolute... Don't ever skim over wet bonding. But when it comes, going back to the bubbles, I find that if I leave that greasy sort of surface on the bonding and skim over it, I get bubbles. So what I do is, if I can't wait any longer, as the bonding starts changing colour, that greasy, slimy... If you've used bonding, you'll know what I mean. It's like a skin of slime on the surface. So get the back edge of your trowel and just scrape it off. Just scrape that off, the bonding, until you're down to like the dark, you know, where it's set, and then skim over it. That way I don't really seem to have any problems. Every now and then I'll get a little bit of bubbling here or there, and it's a pain in the butt. And you think, I got all the slime off, I think. But obviously, I think I'm missing bits. That's the only thing that I can think might be causing the problem for you. It's the only thing that I ever used to suffer with, that like slimy, slippery coat on the top. If you sort of leave it for another hour, that tends to set as well. So hopefully that'll solve your problem for you. It's hard to know unless you sort of send me pictures what you're dealing with. It could be, you know, that you've let a little bit dry out too much, and then as you're trialing over it, it's tearing off, you know, because that happens as well. If it dries out too fast and you hit it with your trowel, you can drag a little bit off. So if that's the case, you know, sort of give it a good old splash with your splash brush and put some back in there again, you know. Okay, another question by the same guy. Is the first coat mix thicker than the second coat, or are they the same? Okay, so when we're talking about skimming finish, first coat thicker, so yes. So it all depends what I'm skimming over. If the wall's everywhere, lumps, bumps, or I'm going over Artex, I'll have the first coat a little bit thicker. Now when I say thick, I mean, you know, just sort of like fluffy. I don't want it where it's breaking my arm trying to get it off the handboard. So a little bit of thickness if the wall sort of needs it, and then once you've got that nice and flat, then yeah, you can give it a second coat a little bit wetter. Ideally for me, if the walls aren't bad, I would rather just use the stuff wet and have it the same for both mixes, just because it's easier on the arm, you know. If you're only skimming a wall every now and then, it probably wouldn't matter. But when you're doing this sort of day in, day out, if you're just adding more pressure to your joints. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys have ever struggled with your elbows and your wrist. I have. So, I mean, just try and make everything as easy on the body as possible all the time. So I prefer the stuff wetter, and I'll have, you know, I would say that I've sort of got it as wet as it will possibly go on the wall, sort of any wetter, and it's sort of dripping off my handboard. So, yeah, I basically use wet gear, you know. It's not for everyone. I have worked with some plasterers and they don't like it. They prefer the stuff just thicker. But you know, it's whatever you feel comfortable with. I'd say if you're just starting out, if you're new to plastering, and you should only really be trying to get one wall or maybe two walls at a time. So, you know, a bit of thicker stuff won't do any harm. It'll make it easier because you won't drop as much, you know. All right, and Kyle G has asked, do you have any tips on how to plaster faster? So yeah, Kyle, I've actually made a video on this. I think it's called How to Plaster a Wall Advanced Techniques, or something other, Advanced Techniques. Basically, the main takeaway from the video is there's a few things that you can do, but I would say the biggest sort of game changer is pay attention to your trowel when you're troweling up, when you're laying on. If your trowel's 14 inches, every time you sort of give a stroke on the wall, go right to the end, you know, overlap your last stroke by about an inch, half an inch. Don't keep sort of moving along half at a time, because you're just wasting the amount of energy you're using. You know, if you've laid one section on, move right along and overlap by about an inch. Because you'll find if you watch yourself at the minute, if no one's sort of mentioned this to you or you haven't noticed yourself, you'll be going over and over and over the same part of the wall by just, you know, only moving over 2 or 3 inches. If your trowel's 14 inches, move over 13 inches. You know, if you've got an 18-inch trowel, but you're only moving along the wall like 5 inches at a time, what's the point in having an 18-inch trowel? You know, put your 18-inch up the wall, move over 17 inches. You're only overlapping half an inch, you know, and away you go. And you don't have to actually move any faster. You'll just really speed up, you know. But I'll tell you the thing, right? We had a lad in working with us, a young lad, and he was a good lad. He was labouring and he was just fetching us water, you know. He was fetching the bags in, fetching the water in, and we were troweling up. Me and my brother, we had the plumber was working in the bathroom and he'd left his blowtorch, and we had an old dabbing trowel. So what I was doing was got the trowel and got the blowtorch on the dabbing trowel. You know, don't do it on your skimming trowel. We had it on the dabbing trowel, blowtorching the metal on it. You know, Stephen, quick, get us more water, and you heard him sort of running. And as he got close to the room, stashed the blowtorch out the way. and pretend that you've just come off the wall, and as he comes in with the water, I get the child and go straight in the bucket of water, and he was like, you know, wow. It gets hot, mate, because we go so fast, you know. Get more water quick, and then you go off again. You get the blowtorch back on it, you know, get it red hot again. Next, go, oh, flipping heck, his face. Yeah. Must have thought to himself, wow, them boys, they really did off plaster fast. The trowel's nearly on fire. Right. Anyway, I think that's going to do us with, I think we're about 20 minutes, aren't we? So I don't want to bore the life out of you. So yeah, if you let me know if you think this is a good form of video. Obviously, I'm going to carry on doing tutorials, but I just thought maybe once a week we'd do like a little questions from the comments section and see how we get on. So anyway, guys, you know the score. Listen, I found as well, it's flipping corny as hell, isn't it? Me little Tartar. So I think I'm going to cut that in the head and just say ciao or goodbye. You know. Oh, don't forget the deal is, you know, if you want to buy me a pint, there'll be a link in the description. See you later.